Hey guys, welcome back. Let's go through the three wives of John Washington, who would be the great grandfather of President George Washington. No, Anne Pope is the daughter of Nathaniel Pope and Lucy Ann Fox because in Nathaniel Pope's will, he writes son in law John Washington. He also writes son-in-law William Hardage or Hardwick, depending on the name change. We also have another document of Nathaniel Pope showing his daughter as Anne Pope alias Washington. Anne Pope obviously dies, and John Washington marries again. He marries a woman named Anne. She's even in his will as Anne Washington, but the Anne Washington in his will is not Anne Pope, even though they both have the same first name. The Anne mentioned in his will is actually Anne Brett because there's a document showing that where it says John Washington intermarried with the widow or relict of Mr. Henry Brett, referring to the second Anne. We do not know the maiden name of her. So that would be a second wife. Now, one wife that there is controversy over is that Washington married two sisters, meaning his second wife is said by some genealogists to be Anne Gerard, sister to Frances Gerard, his actual third wife. The problem here is that Dr. Thomas Gerard had two wives and he had several children and several son-in-laws. In Thomas Gerard's will, he does not mention an Anne at all. He only mentions sons and he mentions one daughter, and then he mentions a son-in-law, Blackiston, meaning Nehemiah Blackistone. In another document, he shows him being transported from England back to Maryland and lists all of his daughters at that time along with his sons. We know for certain he had a daughter named Mary Gerard. We know he had Justinian Gerard and John Gerard because they're both mentioned as brothers-in-law in the will of Robert Sly, one of his sons-in-law. But there is no mention anywhere of a daughter named Anne. Therefore, we have no evidence to prove that John Washington married a sister of Frances Gerard named Anne, because no Anne exists in the will of Thomas Gerard or any other documents. John Washington's wife he names in his will is in 1676. Frances Gerard married 5 times in all, John Washington being her fourth marriage. There are documents showing that John Washington intermarried with the widow or relict of John Appleton, being Frances Gerard. There's even a marriage settlement between John Washington and Frances Gerard. And the reason that exists is because in 1676, they obviously had to have gotten married. The problem is John Washington died after 1676 and Frances Gerard survived him. We know this because there's a document showing her as Madame Washington. It does not say Madame Frances, but we know it's her because it mentions her son Gerard Peyton, meaning she married previously several times. One of her children from an earlier marriage to Valentine Peyton shows that her only issue or son from that marriage was Gerard Peyton. So the fact that it mentions Gerard Peyton with Madame Washington. So John Washington married first Anne Pope, second Anne, we don't know her maiden name, even though she married Broadhurst and Henry Brett. She dies after his will is written, and then John Washington married third Frances Gerard. Now, the only children John Washington ever had was with Anne Pope. He had no children by his second wife or his third wife.